Welcome to ACD Combatives, your combatives and control tactics channel. Please like, subscribe, and share. Hey guys, Coach Kurt. So I got a request to demonstrate how to get to certain aikido style takedowns, throws, locks, holds in reality. Or how would, I think he said Steven Seagal shit. How do you do that stuff in reality? And here is a demonstration of aikido randori. It's very flowy, very pretty. It's fun to watch. It's actually fun to do. I've cross-trained in aikido. My background is hapkido, very similar arts, a lot of the same type of techniques. Hapkido, of course, much more aggressive and a lot more striking, or in Japanese, they would say atemiwaza, but that's neither here or there. But maybe that's why I was quicker to pick up on how you would make it work, because when I got into when I got into law enforcement 26 years ago, I discovered early on that Hapkido was very effective, but it also failed me on many occasions because how you train it and how you do it in reality are very different. I found out that it's very difficult to just snatch somebody's hands up, Aikido style, and it can be done. Here's me doing it. The guy had a metal vape in his hand. It was a DUI stop. He refused to put it away, and it was a big chunk of metal in his hand. I didn't want him to have it. And granted, he's a drunk regular Joe. He's not a trained grappler or an MMA fighter, but I timed it right, and I was able to just snatch him. I've done this, I don't know how many times, some variations of this type of stuff on a regular basis. He pulled it away. I said, hey, man, you got to put it away. He said no. He blew the smoke in my face. You might be able to see it. Poor video. I apologize. But I waited for him to put it back up to his mouth, which put his elbow in the perfect bent elbow position. Again, timing and being aware of how to enter the technique. And then I just did it. I was able to take his kazushi, off balance him using a little bit of a tenkan turning motion, and then put him across the hood of the vehicle. That simple. But practicing it in the gym and doing it in reality can be very different. So how would you do this kind of stuff on a regular basis? It can be done, and it comes in handy on several occasions. Like here's me demonstrating how I've used the Sankyo against rear naked choke defense when I do my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes. Here's how I usually teach the Sankyo, or a lot of the techniques I teach from that come-along, where you're on the outside of the arm, or basically it's a Russian 2-on-1 or a modified Russian 2-on-1, and that's how I teach it. You have to boil it down to a simple way of teaching. You can't get too complicated from the start when you're teaching these techniques. But then you have to ask, how do I get to that position? And before I answer it, you'll see me doing it again. I'm spinning him. I'm going to the outside of the arm and basically a 2-on-1 and using that Sankyo technique. Guys, this is the video I have. It's hard to find video with this kind of stuff. So I apologize. It's the same technique over and over. But here I am using wrestling. Wrestling is the key, guys. Wrestling, and I'm not talking Division I wrestling or, freestyle or folk that you might have learned in high school or college. I'm talking about wrestling for MMA. Why do I mean wrestling for MMA? Because wrestling for MMA is very different from your regular freestyle wrestling or, that type of wrestling, because you have to deal with strikes. And to get into close range, I'm talking the clinch range or dirty boxing range, is the key to making your Hapkido, Aikido, Taiho Jitsu work. And how do you practice that? You drill lots of pummeling, and you use a lot of technique. You use a lot of drills with pummeling, and you do the arm pass or the duck under, and these are ways to get to the outside of your opponent, and being that 2-on-1 or an arm drag is my favorite way to get to it. Now, guys, don't try to force this kind of stuff. Like here I am demonstrating a lot of Hapkido style takedowns and throws. Guys, this one right here, I did this, it was probably only 2 or 3 years into my career. I was working as a deputy at the time. I was in the booking area. 2 inmates were chipping at each other. I told them to shut up. separate them. One stood up and was walking towards the other one like he was going to start the fight. And as he passed me, I grabbed his wrist and I did this exact takedown. I said, no, that's not going to happen. And another deputy came out and helped me separate the guys. This stuff works. It's, again, all about timing. But to get to this type of technique, you have to learn clinch work. You have to feel comfortable in clinch range, that dirty boxing range. Lots of pummeling drills, lots of, arm pass, arm drag, duck under type position, body lock positions. And don't be stuck and married to trying to make, there me doing a little dance. Don't be stuck trying to make your Hapkido always be your go-to. You know I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've got a background in Kaiji Kembo. I have other systems that I've trained in that I use as other alternatives. You have to be able to not force something. Your opponent, the person you're fighting, the person you're going up against, in training it's going to be the uke. In reality, you don't know what it's going to be. Is it going to be a self-defense situation? Who knows? The bad guy, for lack of a better term, is going to actually be the person who dictates what you do. They're going to give you something or not give you something. And guys, training it with your fellow students in a drilling situation and then trying to pull it off in a live roll, as we call it in jiu-jitsu. I have used stuff like this in live rolls, but it's hard to catch against trained grapplers. You know, if you try to pull some of this stuff in clinch range off on somebody who trains grappling, it's going to be difficult because they literally train to block this kind of stuff. They've got good sense of balance. They've got good awareness of body motions and hip motions, and they see your hips move a certain way. They feel you trying to off-balance them a certain way, and they're really good at maintaining their balance and blocking your takedown attempts. Stuff like this tends to work much better on the regular Joe. And don't think it won't work, because I've used this kind of stuff in reality. It will work, but don't be discouraged when you're training it and training it and training it in a controlled setting and then try to use it in a live roll against a resistant opponent, basically trying to pressure test this stuff, that it's going to be much more difficult to pull off because, again, they're trained grapplers. That doesn't mean it can't be done. And there's modifications. Like a lot of the stuff that I learned in traditional Hapkido back in the day, I just junked. I threw it away because I found it very difficult to use a lot of the traditional Hapkido other than just drilling it. Again, we're doing clinch. That was an ankle pick, so that's not necessarily a Hapkido thing, but it's still kazushi. It's off balancing. And I threw them in here because I want you to see how important it is. We are doing some drilling with the pummeling. 1, 2, 3, and then Kodagaish, outside wrist throw. All from, and we'll see, I think we do it again here. I go to the outside. It's a shoulder shrug off the hand, and go to a wrist lock. Here it is, mastering the clinch range. That's what I'm trying to emphasize here. And you need to be comfortable in the clinch range. There I was in like a plum. I got to the outside, and I'm using a leg sweep to take them down. That's something I learned in Hapkido, but you're going to find a leg sweep like this in multiple systems. So what happens when you try to transition and they move? You have to come up with another way of doing it. So then I rotated to the other side. This is a drill that I was doing with Aiken here. He steps out of the way. Now what do? I have to do something else. So I do some atemiwaza, and that off-balances him or gets him to move. And there's another option. I did an ankle pick. Here I am doing that step through to try to sweep, and he moves. Now what do? So I'm telling him, you have to be able to figure out what direction to go next. Well, here you see from the 8 ways you can off-balance somebody that I can now go through his legs, and he has no balance to the backside. His left shoulder, if I go that way, boom, he's going to go down. So that's how you have to make this work. But as you see, it's all in the clinch range. And there I am just doing a circular technique. Again, I'm feeling the direction they're going. Here I am just showing him a hip and leg throw, teaching him how to do it. And then I show him how you might apply it in reality. From a punch, you do a block, and then you clinch up with a head and arm type throw position. Here I am grabbing his wrist and using his head and doing a hip and leg throw. Here I am showing the arm drag variation, where I'm going off to an arm drag, and I'm actually just pulling Val down. She was another one of my training partners back in the day at my last duty station. This is just, and I've used this before too. In jiu-jitsu, I've used it in reality. You just pull the straight down, and it's a great way to get somebody dumped onto the ground. I'll do another video on that maybe if I remember. But here, again, from the outside position, various styles of Hapkido techniques that you would do from the 2-on-1. I'm from the outside, he curls his arm in, and I'm doing a variation of what I call an entering throw. And what do I mean by entering throw? I'm entering their center line. I'm disrupting their balance, taking their kazushi by going into their center line. He curls in, and you see Steven Seagal do the Arimi Nage much more violently than what I'm doing. This is basically the same technique, but much softer on your opponent. Again, he curls in. I'm staying close. I'm riding straight up the center line, and I'm blocking the back, and I'm taking him down. Again, I call that entering throw. I call that entering throw 1. I try to keep this stuff real simple. Here's another variation. Again, how would I get to this position? I would be in the clinch range, and I would do a duck under to get to the 2-on-1. I would do a shoulder shrug. I would do a arm pass, what have you. Here's a second variation of an arm throw, very Hapkido. Again, I'm cutting into a center line to make that throw happen. You've got to take their balance, and the best way to do that is off-balance their center line. Here's the 2-on-1 position again, and I'm saying this is the direction I'm going to point. That's the direction I'm taking his kazushi or his balance, and I'm taking the throw. Blending with somebody randomly throwing a punch out of the air is very difficult. So I always do it from the clinch. Here's another variation of the entering throw. I call it entering throw 3. Just another way to do it. You've seen this. This is even done in Muay Thai, this exact throw. It's not exclusive to Aikido or Hapkido or Taihojitsu or any of the traditional arts. It's all about how you train it. Now, guys, you'll see people train things in very static positions and in very unrealistic ways, but it's important to train the technique in a simple manner, but then you can't just leave it at that. You have to then drill, how would I get to this position? And there's where the pummeling would come in, and there's where the body locks and the clinch range and dirty boxing would come in, using strikes to off balance or distract. I'm not trying to knock anybody out with strikes. Temiwaza's vital point strikes are disruptive of their balance. Here's another variation of taking the balance from a grab. Another classic way Hapkido or Aikido or a Taihojitsu comes into play is when people grab you. And it's been my experience on the job, that's why I'm wearing the vest, that people love to grab my outer vest, especially when they're drunk. I don't know what it is. So you can't have somebody grabbing you, because what's going to happen next is they're going to throw that hand. There's a good example of an Atemiwaza, a vital point. I call it a VA strike. I could have had a V8, and I just pop them in the forehead, and that got into the Z-lock. Again, to reiterate, only way you can throw anybody, regardless of how you're throwing it, Aikido style, Hapkido style, Jiu-Jitsu style, Judo style, you have to take their kazushi. You have to off-balance them. And that is done in the 8 directions. And that's what this diagram is illustrating. If you don't take their balance, you're not going to throw them. And the best way to get to that balance is through the clinch. I'm not saying it can't be done, where, like I said, the Aikido way where Steven Seagal would snatch somebody up, their wrist out of midair. It can be done, but it's extremely difficult. That's why a lot of the throws and takedowns you see in MMA are feeding into the strike or defending from the strike. Striking your way into the clinch or defending yourself from the strikes, and then clinching up as part of your protection. Here I am demonstrating Kazushi and the gi. I'm doing a lot of off balancing. There's a snap down. I learned that in Hapkido, even though that doesn't look like it might be a Hapkido throw. You'll see this in other systems too. I've heard it called sloppy judo, but it's very effective. Here I am just taking his Kazushi, distracting him with a leg sweep. It's not going to take him. That's not what it was meant to do. It's meant to make him step a certain way like I just did, boom, and then sweep the leg from the other direction. But it's all in the clinch range. Now, the clinch range in gi sometimes is a little different because people tend to grab, and it gives you a little bit more space to work with than in a no-gi situation where you're really clinched in uptight and you're pummeling. And here I am demonstrating just taking the balance. I'm doing it slow and methodical to show him how you would do this drop seonage. And he hasn't done a lot of ukemi or break falls, so I'm trying to be careful. But again, all throws are in the clinch range. Now, guys, I'm sorry that this is dragging on, but I think it's important to demonstrate different ways to take the balance. Clinch and taking the balance. Those are the two things you need to take away from this video. Regardless of the style of throw, you have to take their balance and you have to be in the clinch range. It's as simple as that. But I hope you get what I'm coming from. You can make any of these throws work. You just have to think outside the box, and you have to work against an opponent who's giving you live energy. A live energy against a resisting opponent. Now, you can't just do that. You have to drill. Don't think that just because you're doing some basic drills that you're going to know how to do the technique. This is great. We could be practicing throwing each other all day and feel really efficient at it. And then unless you actually pull it off, training it in a live roll, it's never going to happen. You have to build that confidence and ability to do the throw. Anyway, guys, I hope you got the point. Like, subscribe, and share, and everybody take care and stay safe.
Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out.